Hi, everyone. This is Jayne Groll, CEO of the DevOps Institute, and welcome to today's webinar, Ask the Author, Introducing DevSecOps Engineer. I'm delighted to have Andrew Storms, who's the course author from New Context with us. And Andrew's going to share some insight into some of the contents of the DevSecOps Engineer course, why it's important, and how the course was built. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Jayne. Nice to be here. I'm pretty excited about getting this out the door and get it launched.
Yeah, we're excited as well. You know, as you know, over the last year, DevSecOps has certainly emerged as a trend within the security space and also within the DevOps space. And so looking at DevSecOps as a skilled competency, I think is something that we're starting to see trend in enterprises as well as in the skills marketplace. So just on a little bit of our agenda. So obviously we'll start with the welcome, tell you a little bit about DevOps Institute. Andrew will introduce himself and share some of his background and experiences. And then Andrew's going to introduce us to this new course and the accompanying certification and explain not only what a DevSecOps engineer is, why DevSecOps is important, but also some of the story behind the story in terms of how the course was built. We're going to do a little bit of an overview of some of the contents of the course, some of the knowledge of the course, and then we'll look at some other learning opportunities as well. So to get us started, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the DevOps Institute if you're not already familiar. We are a continuous learning community around emerging DevOps practices. We spend a lot of time researching trends, identifying what new competencies are, and really exploring what real organizations are doing in order to make DevOps successful in their environment. Our vision is to facilitate a community where learning is a lifestyle, and our members have access to the most innovative, inspirational, and transformational DevOps content, courses, and certifications. Some would call us an association. We like to call ourselves a continuous learning community. But most importantly, we really strive to provide content that inspires discussion, collaboration, and transformation. So Andrew, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'd happy to. And thanks again, Jayne, for having me here today. And like I said earlier, I'm pretty excited about being able to launch the DevSecOps course in engineering and certificate program with everything. There's a good reason why the DevOps Institute signed up with New Context and signed up with myself as the course author for this, which is we're bringing many decades of experience. Myself, I started out very early in the early 90s as a sysadmin, moved different systems, Unix systems, Windows systems, did a lot of automation back in the early 90s, like jumpstart systems with Java, you name it, right? And through all of that, I've always had a keen eye for automation, for being able to bring security, audit, compliance, all together with everything that we do. And that really speaks the story that we do at New Context, which is a lot of automation, a lot of infrastructure automation, and a lot of testing and security and compliance, all built in. So when I developed the course, it came with just not my background, with the background of everybody at New Context. And to give you an idea, there's a lot of concerns these days with bringing DevOps together with security. And people raise their hands and say, "What about audit?" Right? And I'll tell you what, we're going to go through that in the course. But just to give you a sense of, I've done DevSecOps with SOC 2, with PCI, with EAL assurance, with NERC-CIP, with ISO, and we could probably add COBIT there and HIPAA and everything else, right? It's completely possible, and we're going to be able to give you a little sense of how that works today and a little bit of an overview of the course. So having said that, we like to ask ourselves, what is a DevSecOps engineer? It's important that there are kind of two camps around DevOps and DevSecOps. There's the idea that everything is just cultural, and there's this idea that I could just buy a DevOps off the shelf, right? And the real story too is it's really both, and you have to really merge all that together. We focus a lot on increasing the productivity of our organizations and our DevOps teams, our DevSecOps teams, making sure we still get product out the door quickly, and a lot of people use the word velocity for that. We're always keeping a keen eye on reducing risk in everything that we do, and if we're really smart and we do this well, we get to also get the added benefit of lower operational costs. So a lot of people look at us and say, hey, you've got these three kind of levers that are in competition with each other. But at the end of the day, you can actually make them all go forward in the right direction, really at the same time. So like I said, the course is going to talk a lot about automation, talking a lot about moving security earlier, which is this idea of shifting left that we call it. And then certainly we're going to talk about cultural and supporting organization transformation over time, and how the DevSecOps engineer can be part of all three of those. So like I said, typically security is I use the word typically a lot there, which is security is looked at kind of like the roadblock, or the sticking point, or the roadblock, or the ability that they have their ability to put their hand in the air and stop all production. The whole company needs to stop on a dime, kind of thing. And they have all these problems, but you have the DevOps people wanting to push code at the door faster. And so what we need to do is be able to bring these groups together. So we talk about how security becomes an enabler to the business. We talk about security being able to utilize the same tools with Dev and Ops, and bringing really together in DevSecOps mentality. And at the end of the day, we always have to make sure that we are providing business value. So we also do talk about that in the course, about how it's just not you and implementing really cool tools and making sure security is integrated in everything that you do, but you also have to have this awareness of the sense of what is the company mission and vision, how do you fit in that, and being able to really strive towards delivering value to the company overall. So let me give you a little bit more insight into what the course looks like and the qualification around this. So this is an accredited course with the DevOps Institute. There's a test that goes with it. There's a 2-day training that goes with this. And as we do say here, you can see on the slide, there is a prerequisite for taking this course, which are listed on the website with the DevOps Institute. So why we feel this is important. Jayne brought this up earlier, which is we're really seeing a move within the markets that are happening. You may look back historically and say, well, DevOps kind of came out of left field, and now it's really the thing that's moving very quickly and taking over all of our organizations. We see it at RSA, we see it at DevOps Days, we see it like the DevOps Connect, the DevOps Enterprise Summit. But really what you're about to get hit with is this thing called DevSecOps. And we hope that's not going to come at left field for you. And this course is really going to help get people ready and prepared to be able to adapt and utilize all the great learnings that DevSecOps brings to us. Businesses are demanding that we know how to integrate security into everything that we do, into the product development lifecycle. And we still have to do that, like I said earlier, with the same speed and velocity, with lowered risk and lowered cost that all need to come together to do so. And so if you're listening today, you're thinking, this is interesting, is this really applicable to me? And for the far majority of people, it is. And let me give you an idea, right? It's just not the engineers writing code or the people writing infrastructure or your security folks or your site reliability engineers. It was also about understanding how to manage those teams, how to manage the agile infrastructure that goes with it. And so we do call out, for example, some job titles that might be, you might find out, hey, that's me, right? So if you're in a DevOps group, if you're in a software development group, if you're in security and compliance, what you're going to learn from this course is going to be directly applicable to what you're doing today. And we hope that you'll bring that back to your organization, like I said, show real value for the business, and then also encourage everyone else in your organization to take the course and work together as a team. You might be wondering how this course was built, right? So like I said earlier, you're getting the advantage of the decades of experience, which is not new context to myself, but what we also call the collective body of knowledge. And so that collective body of knowledge comes to us in a giant collection of books, white papers, websites, everything that you see out there when you Google for DevOps or DevSecOps. We did a lot of reading, we did a lot of culmination of all that information that's out there. So for example, you've probably heard of the DevOps Handbook, you've probably read the Phoenix Project, you're probably familiar with the continuous delivery, DevOps Enterprise, and DevOps Days. There's a lot of books out there, and within the course, we actually do call out some very specific books, some that you see here on the slide, and also some other places to go to, whether that's tools or processes or cultural transformation. So to give you an idea, what does the course look like in terms of the different chapters and the way it's broken up? We do start with, making sure people understand what is DevSecOps, why it's important to you and to your organization. We do touch on culture. We talk about Western, for example. We also talk about psychosocial development changes that happen with us and with organizations. We talk about how to remove the walls of confluence between people, or the infighting that happens. Some people like to call that shaking the hands across the aisle, if you would. We talk about how to open those doors and how to talk to other people and work with them. And then from a high level, we do talk about the strategic security considerations that you need to be thinking about. And then we get into some details here. We get into some pretty nitty-gritty details around identity access management, how to implement application security, operational security, and how to always be thinking about what's typically the end game for a lot of companies, which is GRC and audit, right? So it's like, I've done a lot of great work. I've done a lot of implementation of security, and now the auditors are here. Performing the audit and getting the evidence for the audit should be a very simple activity if you thought about that beforehand. Throughout the course, we do a lot of work with designing what are called CI/CD pipelines. So that's the development pipeline. We call out areas within the pipelines of either individuals taking the course or the instructor. We talk about where you can implement security tools and put in automation, reporting, bring in other tools like Confluence or Jira, whatever that suits your organization. We talk about ways to hook all that in there. At the end of the day, the idea is you'll get a fully automated life cycle of the application that includes all that security and audit governance controls that are needed. So why are we here today, right? We're here today, as Jayne said, we are launching the DevSecOps course. It will be available this year. RSA is right around the corner. It should be, you'll see it there represented. Come talk to me at the conference. I'd love to talk to all of the individuals more about it. I know the DevOps Institute will be there as well. And there's a full day before RSA called the DevSecOps, pre-event around RSA that I'm sure there'll be lots of people there to be able to talk about this. I'm going to pause there and let Jayne talk a little bit more about DevOps Institute and everything else here that they provide in terms of the training and their courseware.
Thanks, Andrew, and really good insight into not only how is the course built and what the course content is, and appreciate that, but also why this is important. And actually, before I talk about some of the methods behind the DevOps Institute's approach to learning and skilling, I actually have a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind. It's okay?
I love questions.
Good. So, when we look at certification in the security space is nothing new, right? You mentioned you were CISSP, security certification's been around for a while. How do you think this is different or aligned? So one extreme or the other, right, with traditional security certifications?
Well, so I think when you look at certifications in security, there's kind of two mindsets. One is somebody got it just to have the extra letters, and they don't really know what they're doing, right? And then the other mindset is you have very practical, hands-on ability to implement the thing which you're certified for. What I found interesting about this course is it's really a good merge of both. So there's the high level talking about strategy and how to talk to people in cultural transformation. And then we also get pretty nitty gritty with it and talk about here's how you'd make a connection with Jira. Here's why that's important, how you would want to then implement like security, tests in there, whether that's something like linting or static analysis or dynamic analysis, and where that fits in, to your organization and your development lifecycle. So, like you said, I got a CISSP. I've had lots of other titles over the years, and I think this is one of the ones that would probably stick for a lot of people. It's an important one that's very topical on a lot of people's minds, and businesses are asking for something like this today.
Yeah, I would actually agree. I said we've really seen kind of an upward trend in DevSecOps of even the last 12 months, where you mentioned RSA, and I know last year the DevSecOps track had like 900 people. Be interested when you guys come back to understand more about that. And then we also know that there are events like DevSecOps days that are starting to emerge, and there's certainly, you know, no lack of interest and discussion on some of the most common forum sites and things like that. So that's interesting. The other thing that you brought up, and I would like if you wouldn't mind to elaborate just a little bit, is you know, this is not just for the traditional security professional. I mean, you know, in the T-shaped world where, you know, part of what we're trying to achieve is to break down the silos and to encourage people to have a specialty, but also have broad-based knowledge. It seems to me that everyone needs to at least have some familiarity with DevSecOps in order to do their job, whether they're a developer, an infrastructure person, or anywhere in between the two. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a very key point, right? And earlier when I talked about people butting heads and, you know, arguing with each other, and we go about this within the in the course as well, where, for example, you know, the ops team may only be concerned about uptime, and security team may only be concerned with risk, you know, and then you've got development team only wants to get things out the door, right, as fast as you can. But, you know, in terms of, you know, the broad base of knowledge, right, in order to get those teams to work together, you do need to have, you know, whether it's a mile wide or inch deep, or you need to be very, you know, deep in, you know, of a mile into, you know, your specific domain. In order to work together, you have to have a sense of what everybody else is doing and their piece to the puzzle. Jayne, you and I have talked about this before, where, you know, I worked at a company back in the early 90s where the first week or two on the job was you did everybody else's job but yours. So I spent some time in the warehouse, I spent some time in QA, product development, right? And at the end of that, you went to your job, but you immediately knew your piece and how it fit, and you learned how to go over to talk to somebody, ask questions, or learn more, and you could interface very well with them. And so much of what we do in DevSecOps is about learning to interface, you know, with other groups. You know, there's I like this quote, somebody called it the corner office compliance officer, right? You can't be that kind of person. You have to get out of your seat. You have to go spend time with people. You just can't simply open a ticket for another group and, you know, kind of throw it over the wall and hope it will get done and done to your liking, right? You can't do that anymore. In organizations that, you know, we've worked with, you know, with New Context as a consultancy, a lot of things that we do, just not implementing automation. We also kind of try to do this, like, recombining their DNA of the organization to show them, like, you know what, you're having a meeting here and you're talking about some pretty important features of your product. Well, why don't you invite a security person, right, to at least listen in, and then, you know, to have them eventually have their input in there. If nothing else, build awareness of what's going on inside that organization.
Yeah, and you know, and again, in today's very cyber risk world, you know, the fact that security would either stand out on the perimeter of everything else happening in software delivery, or you know, be perceived as that, you know, that big stop sign before going into production is really pretty antiquated. And you know, I always think of the Phoenix Project, that poor character, you know, who walks around, you know, like the Grim Reaper. That's not who today's security professional is or should be. And certainly, you know, I think we all know that one of the reasons that this has really become a hot topic is that dev and ops are great, but if you're not in today's world really doing a good job of continuous security, you know, everything's continuous in our space today, right? But really looking at continuous security as part of continuous testing, I think that's important as well. And so it's one of the reasons why, you know, at DevOps Institute, we really avoid very generic certifications, you know, no expert, no master, no professional, no practitioner. You know, we really have been trying to look at skills modernization, and this seems to be one of them. So having said that, you know, thank you, Andrew. I said I'm really excited about this one. I mean, when we start to look at kind of the recipe of DOI's learning competencies, and everything we've done is really meant to be not only the most hireable skills, certainly that's a piece of it, but also the most critical skills that organizations need in order to be able to achieve the kind of transformation they're looking for. DevSecOps really fits into that recipe. But if you also look at the rest of the scheme, you know, Testing. Everybody has to become a tester these days, whether you're a developer, whether you're infrastructure, whether you're security, right? Testing is very pervasive, and continuous testing has become a part of it. So we introduced a DevOps test engineer, and that, like security, is not just for QA anymore. Looking at automation architectures in the form of continuous delivery architecture, site reliability engineering. You and I were just talking about SRE, and I'm really excited to be going to SRECon and picking out some more of those practices as well. And then also bridging service management and hoping to make it more agile as well. It is important for everyone listening today to recognize that DevOps Foundation, our core base course, is the prerequisite to all of our advanced certifications other than Agile Service Management and Agile Process Owner. For those wondering why we require DevOps Foundation, is in today's DevOps world where there's so much information and so many practices that are emerging, it is important as you move through your learning journey to have a common vocabulary, to have a common understanding of practices maybe you'll never participate in, but you should at least know what they are, whether it's containers or microservices or cultural considerations or agile software development. So DevOps Foundation really gives a learning experience for everyone, right? So it's not technical. We save the more technical aspects for the more advanced courses, but it does give everybody kind of a common ability to speak to each other and start the knowledge sharing and start the collaboration point. So DevOps Foundation certification is the prerequisite for DevSecOps engineer. Also important to understand, DevOps Institute, we don't do any direct training. So we work through our extensive global partners. Right now, I think we have 130 partners in about 31 countries. So go find a registered education partner near you if you're not already working with one. They are the ones that are going to be the delivery channel for DevSecOps engineer, as well as all of our other courses. For us, our goal is to really engage the continuous learning community. So connect with us. Membership is free in the community, and we've introduced a job board that's DevOps job specific. We have a members only Slack channel so that we can really start to exchange knowledge and information, including what we call a Slack side chat, where you have an hour of access to a thought leader or an expert in the DevOps space. And Andrew's going to be one of our Slack side chat guests in the coming weeks, so that we can allow you opportunity to ask questions. So connect with us socially, connect with us, become a member of our community, and pay attention to DevSecOps. This is an important topic, and we think it's going to bring some real value to the organization. On that note, Andrew, thanks for your time today, and really thanks for helping to author this course and really bring that knowledge to the continuous learning community.
Well, thank you again, Jayne. I'm looking forward to people taking the course and giving feedback, just like good agile developers do, always looking for feedback on what's out there, and also looking forward to the Slack side chat, which is definitely a tongue twister.
Awesome. And thanks everybody for your time today, and we hope that you'll engage with our community and that we'll be sharing knowledge with you soon.